Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blue Talk. Again, John, Dave and myself are going to look back over our pretty dismal performance against Wasps last weekend, all the other European action, and look forward to our big game against Bath. So boys, 33-6 defeat to Wasps in the RDS.
Pretty dreadful stuff. Possibly our worst home defeat, certainly of the modern era.
Well, I was thinking Munster in the quarter-final.
06.
And before that, Leicester Tigers in the quarter-final the previous year. That's such a far you have to go back.
That's over a decade ago, so that puts it in context. We didn't take a losing bonus point. I was thinking about. I watched the game again, and what struck me when I watched it again on television was how very similar it was to performances. Do you remember we had that run of games where we beat Munster 5 or 6 games on the bounce?
Yeah.
And Wasps did to us what we did to Munster. They just let us kind of crash ineffectually up against their defensive wall, then took the ball off us and scored.
Yeah, they were very cute. They played the kind of game you play when you go away in Europe. They played a game which was high on defence, high on, I wouldn't call it spoiling, but they could release the trigger of those 3 lunatics out the back.
But you see, I think that was
Christian Wade,
spells
Frank the
from
Tank,
the original selection. Like, okay, I know we were kind of hamstrung with injuries, with Issa out, Luke out, Ben Teo.
but we should have put Madigan at 12 and Kirshner in the back.
It just didn't seem to. It wasn't a balanced team. And Dave Carney was clearly either injured or absolutely petrified of the pace of his opposite men, because he was
definitely injured.
When the ball went over his head, he was checking back to see rather than sprinting to the ball.
He was more concerned with where he was than where the ball was.
We all shouted at him.
I think you have to say that. I mean, Wasps do have an exceptional back three, but the thing is, a back three is only as good as the ball they get, and we did nothing to stop them having the ball. Except, like we kept it, we used it, we went from side to side. Our pass count was very, very high. But, we didn't really do anything with it. I mean, it was almost like, I said it earlier today, it was like penny ball as it became known.
Yeah,
we spent a lot of time going wide and a lot of time going back the other way and not actually doing a whole lot.
But if you look at the team selection, I mean, like, seriously, who in that team is going to create anything in the midfield? For whatever reason, I don't know, we don't see the players Monday to Friday. But, like, one of our few fit threats last weekend was Ringrose, and he was sitting on the bench for 71 minutes. Like, Teo has been outstanding this year, but he's injured. Issa is always great with the ball. Rob Kearney can be, but they are injured.
Well, to go back to
what you were saying about the selection, and I agree with you entirely. I mean, we had a 5'8" playing fullback. We had a guy who's shown himself to be a pretty effective winger playing centre. Yeah. And we had a Springbok fullback on the wing. Yeah. And the thing of it is that I think there was fear about the inside centre position in terms of Noel Reid, and that's why McFadden
rightly fear.
There was a concept. The idea was that Noel Reid had played well enough and therefore had to start, right? As a result of which, we need a really hard tackler either side of him. You got one in Johnny, so they decided they needed one in Fergus. Now, that was a mistake. If that was the thinking, it was a mistake, because what you ended up doing is you ended up playing a couple of guys at a position just to cover one guy, the potential that one guy might actually do something. Now, in fairness, with the ball in hand, he was probably our biggest threat, but that's like being the world's tallest dwarf.
Well, to go back to the thing we harp on about every week, or maybe it's just me, our centre pairing. Like, it looked a few weeks ago like we were Luke and we started the Diviso game with Luke and Ben Teo. Okay, they're both injured. So Reid is the only other constant. We haven't played Ringrose in the centre, so to throw him in a Heineken Cup game or a Champions Cup game,
there's been opportunities, John.
He's played the end of games there,
but he's played in the wing.
I know he's played in the wing, but I'm saying he's moved in during games, but he hasn't started the game there, and throwing him in a Champions Cup mightn't have been a good idea. But it's what I would have done. I mean, you pretty much named it there. What I think everybody is saying is Kirshner at full back, Fergus on the wing, Ringrose in there, and whether you leave Noel Reid there or put him on the bench and put Madigan in there on the basis of getting your best players on the field, it's. I mean, but if you're putting Reid there from the tackling,
to what you're saying there, Fergus McFadden can do a job at centre, but at inside centre, not at outside centre. So if you're going to bring Ringrose in, You could actually you have a number of options at inside centre.
don't think that
I'd
would have
go with
worked either.
I personally go with Madigan, but you do have that option. But picking McFadden at outside centre was a negative move and selectorially handed the advantage to Wasps.
That's where he's always been played by Irish coaches.
It's always
and,
wrong.
When he plays in the centre. If he's not on the wing, he's at 13. I mean, he hasn't played 12 for Ireland as far as I know, ever. He hasn't played a 12 for Leinster in a long time now. I could be wrong about the Ireland, but I'm pretty sure
Yeah, but his when he first came into the Leinster team, it was him at 12.
Oh, I
and
know,
O'Malley
but
at
you're
13.
going.
That
I
was-
know that, but that's going back.
If you
4
look
years.
at the
4 or
way
5 years.
Leinster like to play rugby, or like their inside centres play, certainly the way that Gordon Darcy played the game, the player who plays the game the closest to that is actually Fergus McFadden.
Well,
Well, are the chickens coming home to roost for Leinster now by selecting Leo Cullen as, obviously a very inexperienced coach? He's in one season of.
it wasn't like there was any alternatives.
No, we were told there was a line of fellas.
No,
world
we
class
weren't
coaches.
really.
Yeah, but look, that they can go out and
We're
you can
told
get
we
a
wanted
coach,
a
you can
line.
pay somebody, but they obviously went down the road. Look, we don't know, but the
Think you're
reality.
going to have a problem finding a coach?
They could do, actually.
But the reality is that we've picked him, or the branch have picked him to be the coach, and he's got an assistant coach in Girvan, who are very inexperienced.
Mhm.
So I'm asking you: is that inexperience now with their selection that, like, they obviously made a mistake, it didn't work,
Hmm.
and it's a results orientated business.
Of course.
So, Cullen's got a 2-year deal. So he wants, fellas up to speed. So he's picking, out of form Springboks, out of form or non-selected guys that were in Irish panels but didn't make it for the World Cup, ahead of the future of Irish rugby, or one of the futures of Irish rugby, who he might come to, he might be a brilliant player in 1-2 seasons down the road, but he's still a lot to learn. But for as far as Cullen's concerned, it doesn't affect him because he could be gone, or he's got to get results right now. He can't wait 2 years.
Well,
That's,
there's three or
that's
four
the Matt
things that-
O'Connor.
First of all, you forgot that there's a third inexperienced coach there, and which did us which caused significant problems on Sunday as well, and that's John Fogarty, a scrum coach. I mean, our scrum was a dread on Sunday.
Considering the personnel, it was.
Yeah, considering
it was
the personnel,
shocking.
it was shocking. But yes, what you're saying is right. But on the other hand of that, I mean, he's inexperienced. His backs coach is inexperienced, but his backs coach knows exactly what every back in the squad can do because he's either played with them or coached them at
In the
A
A
level.
team, yeah, that's true.
So, or had them as when he was head of the academy. I mean, there's guys. It's hard to know why guys are being picked in certain ways. Fear is maybe a reason for it.
Look,
Although they don't strike me as fearful men, and that's the thing that worries me is that you could if they were picked that team because they were scared and they didn't want to lose, you could understand it. You might agree with it. You can understand it, but they're not. Gervin Dempsey and Leo Cullen have never struck me as fearful men.
no, but it was a perfect storm there. I mean, you had Dai Young coming over with the bit of info from Jimmy Goppert. He obviously they did a lot of work on Leinster. They knew how to play us. They knew where to stop us, how to slow us down. If you notice, even when we were playing half decently in the first half, we'd get to the 22, and it's happened us a lot. When teams cop onto us, we get to the 22, and we would just run out of. We'd either make a bad pass, we would stop penetrating. We could penetrate, hit the 22, nothing. We were camped on their 5-metre line a couple of times in the first half, and we just didn't look like getting over the line. They were playing it very smart. When I watched the game back, I only watched the first hour of it back, but when I watched it back, I was
missed the good bit
expecting.
then.
Yeah, I know. I was expecting to see loads of space around the ruck. When I was in the ground, I was going, they're all fanning out so quickly. There's got to be space around that ruck. If we had somebody like Luke McGrath to come on and do a bit of sniping around the ruck, if we had players just going straight. Remember your man, the prop who used to play for Northampton, who's over in France now, the big huge Tongawiya.
Yeah.
Remember he used to do that break straight through the centre of a ruck and down the middle of the field, and there'd be if there wasn't a scrum half sweeping in behind, there was no one to stop the guy. And I figured that must be the case. There must be space around the ruck. There actually wasn't when I look back at it. Don't know how they managed it, but they seemed to be able to fan out right across the pitch. They had all the wide channels covered, but they also had cover close to the ruck. And it was mainly because they were putting nobody into it. Unless, if it was a defensive ruck, they were putting one guy in it. The tackler, he'd roll away. There might be one other guy go in. And that was it. So they were so well prepared to be able to, and they also had the back three to pick us off, because all they needed was a sniff, like a kick chase, like which led to the first try. In fairness, and Dave Kearney ran straight past us in the grandstand, and we all shouted at him, "Watch out! Watch out!"
So it was you to put him off.
It was us to put him. I'm convinced, because your man was gaining on him so fast that we were, trying to give him a bit of urgency, and of course he turned around, looked at him, tripped, and we know what happened next. Now, within seconds of that, or within minutes of that, we had a scrum down on their line, about 5 metres out, because he actually carried the ball back over. If you saw the body language going into that scrum, like, to me, that was with the pack we had out there and the props we had out there, with the full Ireland props out there, we should have been able to we should have been at least looking to push them over that line, really go for it. But if you look back at that scrum, they're all standing there with their arms by their side, looking at the ground. There's not one guy slapping them and going, "Big scrum, big scrum."
Here's the thing.
Motivating
we
them
kept
at
the
all.
wrong coaches.
You reckon?
Look at our scrum last year. No matter how badly we played in
Caputo.
every other part of the pitch.
Yeah.
And the thing is, 12 months ago, right, we beat that Wasps team with a worse team that was supposedly worse coached.
Yeah, but
right?
Wasps are a better
previous
team. Wasps are a
European,
better team, Dave.
they're a better
They
team. So are
definitely
we.
are much better.
So are we.
Are we a better team? We were missing
John Sexton.
Okay, we've Johnny Sexton, but he's out of form.
We had a lot of guys. Sean O'Brien was back for that
Got
game.
concussed after 40 minutes.
Yeah, but we were supposed to be a better team. We're supposed to be a better coach team than we were last year.
Well,
And we're going down to record defeats. Our previous game in Europe was the semi-final. If you want a stark contrast.
And I was at that match, Dave, and I'm telling you, it was Toulon were just poor rather than us being brilliant in that semi-final. We made so many fundamental errors, and you're talking about teams not giving a shite. The way that we defended in the first half in that match in Marseille, we didn't give a shite. It looked like that. It was lackadaisical, as if people didn't give a damn when they were trying to. There was a ball kicked through into the dead ball area, and Carney was jogging back to it.
Well, here we have
but
Matt O'Connor
ultimately
gone, and look, we're still doing it.
Look where we are now. I mean, this
Well, that actually brings.
we said at the time, people were the view was out there that getting rid of Matt O'Connor would be a panacea for all Leinster's
Well,
ills.
no, a few people
we
on
no, we
the
didn't,
internet.
we didn't, none of us agreed with it. But
Well, hold on, I'm happy
Mick
to see him
Dawson
gone.
obviously agreed with it.
I'm happy to see him gone. To be honest, I'd rather see this, if we're going to make a disaster this season, I'd rather see it a disaster that goes to building Leo Cullen as a coach than sees a lame duck Matt O'Connor just stringing it out for another
But
season.
is a disaster going to build Leo Cullen? Can Leinster afford to carry a competition where
Of
we're
course
out of Europe
not.
after 2 rounds?
Of course not.
We've got that big game in the Aviva coming up.
I
We're
know.
out of Europe.
There's a whole lot of ramifications of that.
Yeah.
Hugely,
the way that the group or the way that the competition is structured now, there's really no second chances. Like, if we lose this game against Bath, we ain't got an opportunity to get through.
Even if we
And
win
as
it,
you
we
say-
might be out.
Exactly, and as you say, Dave, we've got, and there's a few other things, not just, they've got 50,000 seats to sell, and I don't know how many have been sold already. They've also got guys, they're trying to attract maybe players after the World Cup. You want to come to Leinster, well, hang on, you didn't make it out of your pool.
Yeah.
You lost the opening 2 matches. We ain't going to go there, the agent says. Or you've got fellas who are coming to the end of their contract, currently
Sean
in
O'Brien,
Leinster.
for example.
All of the other, and there's a
Are
whole
they-
list.
are they
Cian
gonna-
Healy.
Are they going to
Stay
be
with
willing?
also Rans.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've also got, there's threats out there as well. I mean,
Devon Toner.
we are where we are in the Pro 12. Now, we don't want to be running around with our hair on fire and throwing out various babies with soiled bathwater. But we are where we are in the Pro 12. Is that a position based on really good play, or a position based on the fact that everyone was away for the World Cup and now everyone's back? So we've got to.
Yeah, but like
This game against Bath is very, very important.
It is.
It's a very important signifier. Even if we don't win, right? Even if we don't win and we go out, right?
it's
of the
the way
competition.
it's the way we
It's
play.
the way we play. We have to
Like-
show that there is something in this team.
Exactly. Like, if
Yeah.
I mentioned 2 matches, a decade ago, the Leicester match and the Munster match, and in both those games, and probably
A
against
season
Wasps,
apart.
the team didn't turn up on the day, and were annihilated by a better team. Like, I don't mind losing if you lose by a couple of points, and at least you've gone out.
Losing
And-
to that Munster team would have been no disgrace if you'd
Well,
lost.
They went on to win. it.
honestly, but we didn't. We
We went out without throwing a punch.
We went out
really.
without. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. We weren't honest with ourselves on that day, and Munster just absolutely saw that and took huge advantage, and that's That's why teams are great teams, because they do that kind of thing. But we have to, for the future of the, if you like, for the future of the club, certainly the short term future of the club, we have to put up a fight on Sunday
absolutely.
and show that, and show that there is a substance to it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a question on Facebook, I think, Dave, in relation to will the coaching staff have the balls to make big decisions? And
yeah, well, Ricardo Tiernig asks, should Leo drop international players for underperforming last week against Wasps in order to lay down the law, and with whom should he begin? It's a good question. You see, sometimes
That is a good question.
because the players are different. There's no one size fits all approach to motivating or punishing players. Some guys, if they're dropped, take it as right, well, I'm going to work my hardest to get back into that team and I'll show that so and so. And other guys could just go, no, fuck you anyway. So you have to pick the right guys to do it with.
Well, not only that, but
And you also have to kind of go, well, do I need to drop this guy? Or maybe after reading what's been said about them in the press and looking at video reviews on Monday morning, whatever, maybe the players won't need to be dropped. Maybe they've got all the motivation they need. They should have.
Well, whoever they drop, if Theo isn't fit, I'll be putting Ringrose in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could drop.
like he came on,
You could drop Noel Reid for
you didn't watch the
shirking the
last few minutes of
tackles.
it, but he came on and he got the ball 2 or 3 times in one phase of play. Like, he made more inroads into their defence than the majority of our backline did in the previous
It's not
70
like he has
minutes.
to face Sam Burgess. No, but I would try. If Ben Teo was there, if Ben Teo wasn't there, I'd certainly start Ringrose. Absolutely. If Ben Teo was there, I'd probably start
Starting
Ringrose
Ben.
anyway
Yeah.
at outside centre. and try
I'd
and
love
move
to
Ben
see
in.
him at 12
I think that would be.
and
But
sleep and
I want to get our best guys on the pitch. Now, we've the usual mixed reports from Leinster Rugby in terms of fitness of players, etc., etc., etc. God only knows who's going to be available.
Well, you'd have to think the 3 lads that went off with concussion won't be there
Yeah,
for a start, which is Strauss, McCarthy, and Sean O'Brien. Like, 6-day turnaround isn't long enough to pass concussion protocols, even if you're going well, as far as I understand it. So
be an upper neck injury.
yeah,
it is enough to pass, but you don't get to train. You won't get a chance to do a full
train
training
with the
session.
squad. Yeah, so if we're lucky enough to have Issa back, I mean, that's going to make a huge difference to us.
He set out training today, didn't he?
Instead of training yesterday.
Was
Anyway.
yesterday, was it?
The question is, I mean, who would you drop? And the thing is, it's hard to know. I mean, our best young players are guys like Van der Flyer. Would you
Yeah.
drop Sean O'Brien for him? Sean O'Brien didn't actually do anything wrong except get injured.
Didn't too much right either.
No, he didn't too much right, but
neither did Keane Healy when he came on.
If O'Brien wasn't
And no, I
available,
wouldn't say that to his face.
if O'Brien wasn't available, I'd be tempted to start Van der Flyer. Because Bath are going to be right on the ground
Well,
with their back row.
I suppose someone like Murphy. I mean, could you say he's an international and he hasn't performed? He didn't perform in that game.
He's had a bit of a shocker for Ireland as well, but a lot of those guys, Redden had an awful shocker. Like,
Yeah.
there's a great player who had a terrible game. Redden, Geordie Murphy, a couple of others that are on the periphery of the squad, maybe Furlong. Like, they've been kind of caged up with the Ireland team for such a long period
Well,
of time.
Furlong and Moore had Ross had absolute dreads as well. There seems to be a
No, I'm just saying. I'm not
theme.
saying. I'm not looking for a reason. I'm just saying I kind of feel sorry for those guys because they haven't had a proper run, and now they do get a proper run and things go badly and they're in a really bad game. You know, can't be good for their heads. Is all I'm saying. Whereas
Is
the
it,
other,
like, I think it's probably an easy out to say, oh, it's the World Cup hangover. But is there any credence in that? Because, there was 19 or 20 Leinster guys away at it. Presumably they're tired or fatigued.
It's
or
not just a hangover.
Emotionally exhausted.
The problem is
and
that-
there was 2 guys in the England squad in Wasps.
yeah. But it's not just a hangover. It's the fact that they've got to integrate back into
Yeah.
a team, learning all the calls and playing different game to what they're playing under Joe Schmidt. That takes a few goes to bed in, and because there's so many of them, and they didn't all get to play.
Yeah.
We had a few of them against Treviso and a few more of them against the Scarlets. So none of them got to play with each other. Remember we said a couple of weeks ago, he hasn't done the conventional put all the first team out the week before the competition. Maybe this is a wake-up call that's what he should have done, and maybe after the next or before the next batch of
I
games.
think we need a forwards coach, a dedicated forwards coach. I've thought it for a while now. I thought Leo needed help last year because his inexperience was telling. It told on Sunday. We had problems at the line out. We had huge problems with them all. Massive problems with the scrum, which is generally somebody else. We need somebody else in there, just a more experienced head. It's all very well giving young guys their head in terms of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're talking about playing, but in terms of coaching as well, you need somebody with a bit of experience.
You do, and you also need some outside ideas that
Yeah.
you can bounce things off. You know, you need somebody who's maybe you could say Kurt
There's-
McWilkin.
I know, but there's certain
There's
things.
a
there's
certain
things that come.
inbred intellectual process within that coaching
There is.
unit now,
But-
because they're all.
But there does come down, like, you know, coaching plays a huge role and part of it. But there's also, like, red and true balls, like, from here to the door, and it didn't make it to the, or, you know, if it did make it, it was hitting fellas' shins, or there was even passes, not just Redden now, but there was other guys
Johnny
passing.
Sexton kicking that ball dead.
Exactly,
For
That was
there
shocking.
was fellas getting passes at above their shoulders that they needed to jump up for it, or down around their shins, or as you say, you know, Sexton taking that penalty, rush of blood to the head instead of just calming it down for 2 seconds.
one of the big-
But maybe that's leadership. Maybe, like, he's a leader of the team. The Heaslip was the captain. If I was playing and if I saw the out half doing that, you'd go through him. But I didn't. I looked at him after that. There wasn't hardly a
There
word
was-
said.
I didn't
there
see
was
Heaslip
and-
going around
And shortly after
slapping
that,
anyone or
we conceded a try, and Sexton kicked the ball out. Like, this is when the guys need to be the leaders on the pitch need to take responsibility. Like, put it this way, in the World Cup final, you know, everyone talks about Dan Carter, and probably the next best, or certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, the next best out half is Johnny Sexton. Like, you saw the difference in the World Cup final when New Zealand needed somebody, when Australia were creeping up on them. It was Carter that took the responsibility, and Sexton.
the thing about Dan
didn't.
Carter is, you know, he plays in the All Blacks. He's got these guys around him who give
But
him
it
an
was him that
armchair
did it.
ride.
Well,
I know.
there is a question. We had a question
But
on
it's easy to
Twitter
look good.
with regard to.
You still haven't answered the last one. Who you should drop?
We'll get back to that. But Colin Meehan asks about how concerned should we be over Sexton given his recent concussion and injury issues, and he doesn't seem to have had a break in terms of he's either. His breaks all seem to be injury enforced rather than actual breaks.
Well, he had 3 months off up to last February. You know, he had a bit of time. Okay, he was still playing with Racing, but he didn't do that much for Racing in the closing stages
that
of
was
the
a
season.
concussion break, if you recall.
Yeah.
That was an extended
Still a break,
RTP. Well, yeah.
Um,
The other side of that is, I mean, you were saying about passes going everywhere and kicks going everywhere. One of the problems last year was we looked like a very unskilled team, and my belief is that was in part attributable to the fact the reduced amount of time Leinster had access to their skills and kicking coach.
Mm-hmm.
So what did we do?
Got shit
Got
at
rid of the
skills
role.
at kicking. Yeah.
There is no skills in kicking coach anymore. And one of the things about Leinster when Joe Schmidt was there and Richie Murphy was there with him was how well Leinster performed their skills under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
That's all gone.
But that was their tenant. Like,
Yeah.
you know, his strap line when Schmidt came in was, I want to make Leinster the best passing team, and I used to see them at the warm up. They'd be passing around a tennis ball, and maybe they still do that.
And they'd
But-
never drop it either,
But, like,
even in warm up.
it doesn't seem that they, you know, as I said, like, there was passes going above shoulders. Those fellas had to check their stride instead of sprinting onto the ball. Like,
Well-
it's just basic physics that if you have to stop and you have to start again.
If you do the whole train as you play thing, right, which is
Which is
how
what it's all about.
If the guy who's there to train to help you with your skills when you train isn't there anymore, or you don't have a guy, then that's an issue.
And you've already made the point about Leo Cullen needing a forwards coach. Joe Schmidt could handle being backs coach, defence coach, and head coach, but I'm not convinced that Leo Cullen can handle being forwards
Do you
coach
remember
and
what-
head coach.
do you remember
If
what-
he specialised on
Do you
head
remember what
coach,
Joe Schmidt did when he first came here? He sacrificed a defence coach to get a scrum coach.
yeah,
Yeah,
he did. Yeah,
He brought Feek in.
that's right. Yeah. But that guy used to get up before he went
Yeah,
to
I
bed
know he did. I know.
and work.
you see, I think
Euros
the problem
God send
with
him.
comparing anything that happens post Schmidt with actual Schmidt or even pre Schmidt with Schmidt is it's like comparing other centres with Brian O'Driscoll.
It is a
Some
bit.
he's just a one of a kind, you know. We do. I think we need to. I mean, there's a certain area of our coaching ticket being cut to a certain budget, not necessarily the individuals, but the number of them. In that There's no discrete forwards coach. There's no discrete skills in kicking coach. I presume Gervin is going to have to do it with help from guys in the academy. Kurt McQuilkin is there as our defence coach. He's a discrete coach. How long is he going to be there? I'm still not convinced that Ireland are not going to poach him. I'm not convinced of it.
If it is a budget thing that we've got so few coaches, well, have a look at the stadium in against Toulon in December and see the empty seats and do the maths on how much you saved on coaching and that's how empty those seats are.
And John, that's going to bring us on to our match against Bath. Like, lose this game and there will be loads and loads of green empty seats.
Well, that's it. I mean, if we lose this game, we are out of the European Cup this year. I mean, there's no what's around about it.
With Toulon back to back coming up, bloody right we are.
Even if we win, we could well be out of it. But
well, that was our easiest game. Wasps at home was our easiest game, and we're after getting hammered in it. So there'll be some turnaround required if we're going to.
Well, we'll see the character.
Not disgrace ourselves
of the team.
At this stage, I'm not. Well, I do want us to win, obviously, and I want us to win well, and I want us to get 5 points because that's what we need. But what I want more than any of that is I want to see a performance of character.
That's what I want. That's all I want. That's all I want.
Whether we play well, whether we play poorly, but I want to see character.
It's going to be backs to the wall because you kind of touched on it there. There's still, like, the injuries, a lot of those injuries are still going to be carried through from that were on last Sunday to next Saturday. And
see, I'm not. Rugby is a game. Rugby as a sport, it's not one of those sports where you can just go, so we'll throw the young fella in and it'll be like a Roy of the Rovers thing like you sometimes see in soccer, because the physicality of rugby is so much greater and the years of professionalism building up experience and body size, it means that young fellas can sometimes be actually overwhelmed.
So you're not playing Ringrose in the centre.
Having said that, I would I'm not. What I'm saying is I wouldn't throw them all in and give it a last jack. What I'm saying is I certainly would play Ringrose. I would start Ringrose unless everybody else is fit. Then you'd have to have a conversation about it. But unless they are, then I start Ringrose. I mean, I don't think there's any. I can't see any reason why one wouldn't. Away from home.
If we're moving on to Bath, let's see if we can get an answer for Rickard.
Yeah.
Who do you drop? Who do you drop this game?
Scrum half.
Would you?
Number 6. I think some of the other ones are going to be enforced. I like the look of your man Triggs, and McCarthy's presumably out for.
Yeah, he could well.
Would you play Maloney on the bench? Would you go with that? I mean, he really performed well. It's him or Denton.
Again, it depends on the RTP. I mean, McCarthy could be on the bench without having trained.
That's true.
I'd certainly go with Triggs. This used to be the game where you and I think Joe Schmidt actually did it. Where it used to be the game where you'd pick Damien Brown.
Yeah.
You'd pick Damien Brown. You'd pick Isaac.
Every
Ross,
away game.
You'd pick all the big heavy lads.
Yeah. Well, whatever.
We don't have those lads anymore.
Well, and another one I would do is I would definitely make a tweak in the backs, and I'd play fellas in position. I'd play.
What a radical idea!
I'd play the international fullback at fullback if our current Irish international fullback is unavailable. I'd pick I'd pick the winger I'd pick the centre guy who's picked at centre on the wing where he's played 95% of his matches.
In recent years, for sure.
And I'd pick, and most importantly, I'd like yourself, Dave. I'd pick Ringrose because he's the best player to come out of.
Would you put Madigan or Reid inside?
Oh, Madigan.
I would as well.
If that was the option, certainly no question about it. I wouldn't even
Sexton, Madigan, Ringrose.
Yeah, that'd be my 10, 12, 13.
Or Sexton, Madigan, Theo if he was fit.
You see, if you're talking about if we're faced with the same, if we had the same personnel available as we had last week, then it's Sexton, Madigan, Ringrose. If other guys come back fit, then that might change. You might be in a situation where you can go Sexton, Fitzgerald, Theo.
So
you might, and then you have Ringrose on the bench. You've got all these options. Yeah. But as things stand, all we know is that the guys who played last week are fit this week. That's who I'd go with.
So Jason is dropping Geordie Murphy and Owen Redden. In fairness, we can afford to back row being our place of strength, and the fact that we have Van der Fleer in such good form is probably 7 is the place. If Sean O'Brien ain't going to make it, 7 is the place. And I know Murphy started at 6, but he shifted to 7 as soon as Conan came on. So, do you go mad? Do you drop? Who else do you drop? Do you bring Jack Conan in for Jamie Heaslip?
9 changes as they used to do with the Irish team.
We had 2 complete front rows on the pitch, and both were rubbish.
Yeah,
and the only guy who didn't get any of the, if you like, the star props The only guy who didn't get any game time was
Moore.
Moore.
So he has to come in.
So, well, I don't know if he has to or not. I don't know how fit he is at the moment.
If he's fit.
There's like you can't go like we were saying earlier about the coaching staff, and like I said last year, it's better to add guys than take guys away. So I'd bring guys into the fold rather than get rid of them.
No, and I think the question referred to dropping these guys as a punishment.
Yeah.
To try and smarten not only them but everybody else up by saying, look, nobody's undroppable here.
But who are the I suppose the guys that the only real kind of like who we have available to us of the star names are the front row guys. Heaslip.
Sexton?
No, Sexton. I mean,
Sexton's in terrible form.
I know.
I can't see him ever. I can't see him being dropped. I think he's unfortunately.
And I'm not saying he should be dropped.
I think the next step down is massive. Is miles away.
Yeah, it's miles away. Sexton not off form. It's still better than everyone else.
You mentioned bringing in Van der Flyer. Like, I mean, he's there and thereabouts. The next best out half is, not a patch on him.
No.
Well, in fairness, Van der Flyer hasn't played a European game yet.
No,
so
he hasn't.
Well, all we can go on is what we've seen. And the thing about Van der Flyer is, if it was a situation where we weren't able to pick Sean for whatever reason, then he's the guy. I would back Jamie. I'll always back Jamie because I know it makes that guy tick, and this week will have hurt him. Last week will have hurt him.
There's an interesting article in the Irish Independent. Did you read it?
Yeah.
I know that I don't want to read the Irish Independent, but
I read what Rory wrote.
Yeah, but
I think it's a lovely paper.
Wasn't it an unusual piece that?
Oh, about Heaslip and how
I was surprised that somebody would take a pot shot at him so publicly. It must have had a beef. Must have gone off with his girlfriend or something. I don't know.
Possibly.
I remember he's not the first independent journalist to do that. Probably won't be the last either. But the last guy who did it is.
Oh yeah.
I think he's writing for a blog or something. So.
Yeah. Well, look.
Because the thing is, if Jamie becomes Irish captain, then as a journalist you've got the IRFU against you. Who wins?
Do you want to have do you want to have a Mike Brown guy who is really pissed off and because he's really hurt by the loss, which I'm sure it didn't take much to upset Jamie Heaslip after a game like that, and I'd say half of that is that he's pretty pissed off with his own performance, whether either as captain or as on the field. He didn't do anything terrible, but again, I didn't see him going around slapping people on the back and shouting at them.
He seemed very down, but that's not the kind of guy he is. Jamie Heaslip is normally a guy who leads by example, as it were.
Yeah.
And he's not a roarer and a shouter or a patter of
But
backs.
that's what we needed.
The problem was that if he's not playing well, which happens very rarely, but if he's not playing well, then his attributes as a captain suffer because his attributes as a captain follow me.
Well, look, he's one of my favourite players, and I hate saying anything bad about the guy, but I really feel that we needed somebody out there to kick asses, slap backs.
But none of us have ever been in a changing room with Jamie Heaslip, so we don't know what he says or what way he motivates players. He could be an effing and blinding captain. I haven't the rashers.
When Luke,
he seemed to be. He didn't seem to be.
He was very withdrawn, I thought.
Today,
well, when Luke McGrath came on at whatever period that was, about 50 odd minutes. There was a scrum not long after he came on, and he was actually starting to do a little bit of backslapping and right lads, come on.
And Mouthy scrum half, there's a first.
And everybody seemed to turn and look at him, and and I think it looked to me like he got the vibe. Well, okay then, I'll say nothing. It's that because he's not a senior player. That he tried it and it wasn't going anywhere, so he just said, all right then, I'll just play my own game then. So that's kind of a malaise. That's the whole team. It has the whole team. Like if your senior players aren't going to do the backslapping and the shouting and the motivating and the come on lads, big scrum or whatever, who's going to do it? If it's Luke McGrath, it's going to, because he has been a captain up through underage and all. He's captained pretty much every team he's played for at underage. So get somebody in there to do it. If it's not Jamie Heaslip.
And here's the thing. I mean, this team has not been consistently at the level it should be at. This is its fourth year that it hasn't.
Are we in terminal decline? I mean, our standards were set so high, but our standards were set ridiculously high.
Yeah,
And,
well,
you know,
Are we in
there
decline
has to
from
be.
those ridiculously high standards?
Of course.
Certainly. But that's okay. That happens in sport. Man City finished second last year. That's a decline from their standards. Our decline has been met by what? We won the Pro 12, we won the Amlin, we won the Pro 12 again, and we got to the semi-final of the Champions Cup. That's our decline. That is, I mean,
Results-wise,
you can't argue that we're in decline. I mean, it's inarguable. But at the same time, that's our decline. However, when you're used to, doing back-to-back Heineken Cups and dominating teams,
but it was the manner in which
and
we
playing
played.
rugby in a certain way, and you're not doing that anymore, then that's that's a decline. Most of the teams, I guarantee you, there's probably 20 teams in the European Cup would be quite happy to take our decline as their goal. But for us, it's not good enough. When I say us, I mean the team. And you can see it in them. I think there's an element of... we'll go back to Jamie again, because he seems to be a good kind of bellwether for the team. There's an element... He's not sure what's happened. You can see with him, and he's never had to face this
Is anyone?
Yeah, and he's never had... I don't know what's happened. I mean, we watch them week in, week out.
I haven't heard a single pundit who's...
Everybody, there's people who watch this, and the reason why they're watching this thing, right, is because they're absolutely mental over Leinster rugby. Right? And they'll watch them week in, week out, and they'll watch lots of other rugby as well. And if you asked any of them if you asked any of the however many viewers we have to say why we're in decline, you'll probably get 100 different answers from 100 different people, because
You get 3 answers and a woof.
3 answers in a wolf, yeah. You probably get 3 answers in a wolf. But the thing is, you will get all those answers because nobody's really. You can't really put your finger on it. I mean, did we go into decline when Joe left? No, because I think it had already started by then. Did we go into decline when Johnny left? Again, see previous answer. Did we go into decline when Matt O'Connor took over? Or was it just a continuing process?
Yeah, well...
But like, you mentioned Heaslip again. Like, Heaslip is not getting any younger now.
No.
He's 31, is he? I'm not saying that's old and by any... It's not
32 next month.
32.
Big up.
But he's getting towards the latter stages of his career. And don't forget, he was one, Paul O'Connell missed a couple of seasons of his career because he got injured. Heaslip is
High mileage for 10 years,
like a ridiculous amount of games. I'd love to know. He must have nearly 100 Irish caps and probably 200 Leinster caps. So, you know what I mean? He's got a huge amount of miles on his clock.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But he seems to be able to take them. He really does.
And you see, the thing is, I mean, we were talking about, who we drop. I would never drop Jamie Heaslip, and I'll always back Jamie Heaslip. Always. Because...
As a player, yeah.
As a player, that's what I mean. The way that guy's function, the way he thinks about Leinster, and the way his mental process works, the fact that he was, by anyone's standards, pretty poor last Sunday. That's not going to happen this weekend. That's just not how he's built.
Well, if you look at Leo Cullen as a captain for a minute, he wasn't particularly a guy who shouted at people or roared and I don't think from what I've heard in the dressing room he wasn't particularly shouty or even particularly vocal.
Yeah.
But he seemed to be able to motivate people. Whether learning how to do it as a coach is a whole different ball game, and as they say, the best players don't always make the best coaches, and the best captains don't always make
transition to make. Like he was captain of the club for 5 or 6 years, where fellas probably were going to him and I don't know, for advice or for even personal
problems
matters
they were having with the coach,
or even personal issues that they were having within their own lives for advice, because he was seen as a senior guy who didn't speak, and all of a sudden he's gone from
he's the
that.
man, he's the headmaster,
and he's no longer their buddy. He's their boss, who ultimately dictates whether you've got a job next season. So.
Well, it's like he's gone from being the captain of the senior cup team to the headmaster of the school. Literally, he's now on the other side of the fence.
It's always hard to do that. I mean, you look at guys. I think people say, I think Gervin Dempsey did it right because he didn't go back into his own dressing room.
Yeah,
he took a step back and went into the academy before coming back up again. So.
Gervin was very few players that
Rog
would have played with, I'd say.
To do it the way he did it, Birch the way he did it. It's very tough to do it the way Leo's done it. I mean, it doesn't have a great success rate.
Leo did it similar to Foley, kind of. Well, I know he went kind of back to scrum coach and a defence coach. Yeah, but he was still coaching the same senior squad. Yeah. Anyway, boys, we must move on, right? Obviously, there was terrible events in Paris. And there was a lot of matches.
Which puts all this into perspective.
It sure does, but all of the French matches, with the exception of Toulouse, against Sarries was postponed, and obviously the emotional shock or whatever that the French players were feeling that day in London, because they were pretty much annihilated just like we were.
Toulouse, yeah, that wasn't pretty. And Toulouse have been playing well in their
Yeah,
league.
they've been playing very, very well,
playing very well. And they're kind of back to the old Toulouse as well in the league. Whereas, maybe you can put it down to the events in Paris.
It's going to be very hard for those French clubs because there's an element of in France is culturally where like most kind of countries where there's a kind of an anti-feeling about the capital city.
Mm-hmm.
But French people are exceptionally proud of their capital city. Outside, leaving everything aside, they might not always say it, but they are.
Yeah. But most French people who are not from Paris will tell you how rude Parisians are.
Yeah, they tell you right up that. But then you look at the French attitude towards Paris. Paris must be saved has been a phrase that's been uttered before. So it's very, very difficult for them. The thing is, if we had the full run of the calendar, we'd say, all right, European Cup, forget it until after Christmas. Unfortunately, we don't have the full run of the calendar because there's international rugby, there's domestic leagues, etc., etc.
Six Nations will roll around before too long.
Things have to be fitted in. Question is how. I have a feeling that after the Parisian clubs, and this is just from a purely administrative point of view, the most affected clubs will be the Irish clubs and possibly the Welsh clubs because of those interprovincial derbies that are held over the Christmas and New Year's period. The ones that would be cheap to move. Because there's not, you're not having clubs coming from other countries to think. We could find that those interprovincial derbies might be changed into European weekends.
Well, they get ruined often by Irish camp anyway.
Step out, would they? Or would that be like admitting defeat?
They wouldn't be. It wouldn't be politically acceptable for that to happen. I mean, you could understand if they did it. I mean, nobody questioned it if they did it. But I don't think. I don't think
declared them draws or something like that.
Well, I see our old friend who we're playing next weekend, Bruce Craig,
great
came out with some of the most inappropriate.
He really needs to hire a PR guy.
Yeah, it wasn't great now, in fairness. Especially, and do you know what? The guy made a lot of money in France and has a lot of money in France and has lived in France for a long period of time. You'd have to imagine he's got a lot of friends in Paris who could have been affected.
Just wait a couple of weeks till
exactly.
I think the games will all be played. I think the period around Christmas and New Year will be exceptionally busy for those games, and we'll find that a lot of, certainly from when I say we, I mean us as in Pro 12 and possibly, I don't know about Viva Premiership, certainly Pro 12. We'll find a lot of those games will be refixed during the Six Nations.
Like Munster, even Munster, say Stade Francais is going to have a backlog of 2 now.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're not actually.
No, they played on Friday night.
No, they played on Friday night.
Sorry, you're right. Sorry.
I was about to say, all of the Toulouse and Stade Francais played a game and all the rest were at home. So that'll rotate next week, and Toulouse and Stade Francais will be the home ones. So Stade Francais already called off Toulouse. I'm not sure who they have at home.
Oniax.
Okay, well that may not survive, but it is an all-French clash. We seem to be lucky enough in that we're not gonna, Toulon are in December. You'd have to hope that things will have calmed down a bit by December. So we look unlikely to have to play any refix matches, but both Munster and Ulster will, and that'll affect them.
As Dave said,
the Interpros,
the
Interpros usually get kind of spoiled a bit by Irish camp anyway. Like you have to, you have a choice which one you go for with all your players. You can't do both. You've got to rest them for Connacht or rest them for Munster.
I think there might be an element where the Irish camp, unusually in this case, the international team may have to answer a bit to the club game in terms of, rest periods rather than being unavailable to them just because, these games have to be played at some stage. Best time to play them is, when...
Try telling Joe Schmidt and David Nucifora that they can't have their players
I think Joe Schmidt and David Nucifora will be pragmatic about the situation in terms of,
Don't forget, he's had them for 3 months during the World Cup.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
I think they'd be pretty pragmatic guys. And Joe Schmidt, of course, as well, would have a huge love of France as well. So I think there'd be an element of pragmatism there because they're not, unlike certain other people, they're not soulless, money-grabbing whores.
Would you ever get down off that fence and tell us what you really think of them?
Well, I think Connacht have just arrived home today.
Wow.
Yeah, from Russia with love.
Yeah.
Wow.
After their 3-day epic trip home.
That's awesome.
I saw that the guys sitting on the bench, their hair was freezing.
Yeah.
Did you
That's how
see that?
cold
Did
it
you?
was.
Well, Miriam was watching it and she was thinking, Foxford Rugs. They missed a huge promotional opportunity there. They should have sponsored Connacht's bench blankets.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, that's the price of bringing rugby to the farthest reaches of the continent, I suppose.
And they're the only ones that get it as well. The other two games they're playing much further east.
Yeah.
So poor Al Connacht got the short end of the stick there.
Still,
and they've got the front up against Brive, or
It's
presuming
tough
that's
for them,
going
but
ahead.
I think this is going to. It mightn't be great for them on the pitch, but off the pitch, I think this will pay Connacht well. I think it'll be it'll expand their brand in a way that just if they play that team.
They sell a lot of jerseys in Krasnoyarsk.
No, but just in terms of the headlines and stuff like that, I mean, Connacht wouldn't, if they played them in Moscow, so what, you get a consumer flight over to Moscow, no big deal. But this is something that brings the name out into, it'll be on Total Rugby and all this kind of thing.
That's
the two
true.
teams at the furthest edges of the continent playing one
Literally,
another.
yeah, in fact,
so
Is that's technically not in Europe?
if somebody hasn't made a documentary about this, I'd be really fucking disappointed.
I know Russia is considered to be in Europe, but the Ural
The
Mountains
Urals are
are the border
technically
of
there,
Europe,
yeah.
so that's way into Asia. That
Siberia
Siberia.
has always been traditionally Europeanized anyway.
That's 'cause
Mainly,
it was-
mainly due to the gulags.
exactly. That's because they moved half their population there in Stalin's time. Anyway,
Anyway, Ulster play Saris. Bit of revenge now
Yeah.
for Ulster. They've had a couple of run-ins with Saris over the years, particularly the match in Ravenhill, the quarter-final match where
It's the game of controversy. The
Giles
game of the
Kane
red.
got
carded.
yeah.
well, most people would back, Satan's
Disciples.
disciples 15 against Saracens. So supporting Ulster against them is a bit of a no-brainer for almost
I
everyone.
do have to say, I watched Saracens at the weekend, and they played some
They
nice rugby.
played
at the
very
moment.
well,
They're
yeah.
playing, and they're not playing that dreadful drudge that they played before.
Mm-hmm.
They've expanded their game a bit.
They have.
They're playing some nice rugby, much as it galls me to admit it.
I don't know why we hate them so much. I mean, well, I kind of do, but but
Next week's episode, why we hate Saracens so much.
I know why
in
we
two
do.
parts.
What I really meant by that is I don't know why almost every other club in England also hates them. I understand us hating them, but literally there is nobody. Their mammies probably don't even like them that much, and there's a lot of good players at that club who are
They're all breech birds,
who
probably.
you'd look the bigger the head, a slap.
They were so ugly when they were born. The doctor gave their mother a slap. Free nipper.
You leave Jack Berger out of this, will you? But anyway,
Someone went back for doubles. That isn't it?
anyway, what I'm saying is there's some good players there and players who you would respect, decent skins who are playing for that team. And you've got Mark McCall coaching them, who's an Ulster man, played for Ulster in the Heineken Cup win, or did he play? He was injured actually for some of the
He was
games.
captain of the club, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was club captain, yeah.
So there's some pretty people that you could be on their side in the group, but everybody still hates them. They just maybe they can get over it with this new style of play, Dave. What do you think?
To use one of my favourite phrases, it's a gestalt of hate. The hatred is greater than some of the parts. With the new
Can we
side-
see Ulster beating them even
No.
at home?
No,
I can't really.
No.
I couldn't see us beating them either.
No,
So
I don't think so. I think that Ulster are not as strong as they could be at the moment.
no.
Too many injuries, too many
Their injuries
We-
to
Key
key players.
players, yeah. And
And there's areas that they're weak anyway.
we're the three major headline provinces seem to be in an awful bit of decline. In fact, would you pick any of them
Do
to
you see Munster were looking to sign the
Stephen Moore? Yeah,
and
heard that.
News
And got
forward
knocked
let him.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah. He probably went, I know him, he's trouble.
Irish rugby's always been. It's the first time Irish rugby has ever actually not chased Stephen Moore, because even when he was a teenager, if you recall, he was going to be Woody's replacement.
Well, he spent his first 5 years in Galway, and
Yeah.
both his parents are Irish. So,
There was always a chase for him, and then finally it stopped. I could see why.
By
why
Ozzy.
but yeah, exactly. I could see why he said no. I mean, they have a lot of hooking talent between certain ages in Munster. That perhaps
they've
that's
always produced hookers, in
that's
fairness.
perhaps what he's looking at. It's hard to know. Apparently now that they're not allowed to sign him and they're not allowed to sign a 7, they're going for Dominic Ryan apparently. So
Lucky them.
Well, he'll do a good job for a certain team.
But
that
he's not
plays
a
certain way.
seven.
No. He'll do it. The thing about Dominic Ryan plays the game a certain way. Now, I don't think it's the way that's best ideally suited for Leinster. But he might find it might be better suited. Munster like a more
They've got Jordan
hard
Coughlin
driving kind of
from
sure
us. They've got Copeland who can play 6 and 8. They've got Stander who can play 6 and 8. They've buckets of fellas who can play 6. The last thing they need is
another one.
Another one.
But then they've never really. I mean, Gerrards was probably the last out and out groundhog they
That's
had.
going back.
And that's going back a long time. It's not a position that it's not a guy that they've ever had. David Wallace played a different kind of game.
David Wallace
as a
played
seven.
for 15 years there.
I know, but what I'm saying is he played a different kind of game. That's the mould of the months. If you're a young fella watching and you're playing an upside flanker for Munchins or Crescent, you're going to want to play like David Wallace. So that changes how a province plays, how an entire province sees a position.
David Wallace is a genetic freak, though.
Oh, he was.
The man
he was,
is just so fit and so fast and so
the entire
he
Wallace
had it
family
all.
like that.
They're all genetic freaks. Yeah, God love them.
Good players, though.
Brilliant.
And obviously today was very sad news about Jonah Lomu passing. He was probably the first superstar.
And still the biggest superstars of rugby. I mean,
Yeah.
we were talking a while ago about, we were talking about Leinster and we were talking about Ian Madigan and Johnny Sexton. We were saying Johnny Sexton's a franchise player. He's a guy you build a team around. Jonah Lomu was a guy you built a sport around, not just a team. The entire sport.
I remember going to Extravision and seeing Jonah Lomu's PlayStation game.
Yeah, I had it. I bought it.
I mean, coming from being my age, to ever think that there was going to be a PlayStation game,
Rugby,
I was going, no way.
But the thing about it was, I mean, Jonah Lomu took rugby out of being a minority sport during that World Cup because what he did was so extraordinary and that character he was.
And he also
so
hit the dawn of professionalism. Spot on.
Bang at the right time. Yeah, he had right at that sweet spot. He was the right guy in the right place at the right time. And the thing about him was that he was he was also, some guys are, they're brilliant players and they have this ambassadorial role thrust on them and they're not really suited to it. Jonah Lomu was made for it.
There was over just before the World Cup, there was a brilliant documentary on with him, and he went back to South Africa and he was meeting up with some of the players that he played against in the '95 World Cup final. But he met Van der Westhuizen, and he's obviously suffering
in a bad way.
ALS.
And it was just sad seeing the two of them. These two super athletes speak of their game 20 years ago, and
look
one
at them
died
now.
now, and the other fella's in a wheelchair.
Well, as we said beforehand, if you gave most professional rugby players starting out a choice of you can be Jonah Lomu and you'll be dead by the time you're 40, I'd say most of them would go, yes.
I'd say Jonah Lomu wouldn't take that choice, to be honest with you, because he was talking there not all that long ago about how his plan was to be alive for his children's 21st.
Yeah.
And I'd say when he was young and he was, at the top of his game and he was a superstar of sport as an athlete, maybe he might have said that. But then I'd say as he grew and he realised,
of course,
as he opened his eyes and smelt the flowers,
No 39, 40-year-old is going to sign up for that. But I'm saying guys who are 19, all of them would sign up.
But
he was.
He
might not like the paycheck.
The greatest star this game has ever produced. I mean, maybe there's been better players produced, but as a star, as an icon.
Well, he just exploded that World Cup, because it was it was the first one that South Africa were back in. Nelson Mandela, the whole thing about it. Then, of course, he scored his 4 tries against England.
And he ran over everybody.
He 4 tries in the quarterfinal of the World Cup, and the way that he did it, he was just a genetic freak.
Talk about David Wallace being a genetic freak.
Yeah.
But I always remember what I remember the week leading up to that, the English press was full of how he's great, big guy, but Tony Underwood will turn him. Tony Underwood will take him on the outside. He'll turn him and take him on the outside. And do you remember the first time he caught Tony Underwood and flung him off the pitch? And that was just like, right, that's it. Game over, lads.
There was a bit of arrogance in that. Maybe not Tony Underwood, but Andrew and Carling and all those lads would have been, who were coming to the end of their time, would have been seen as a bit arrogant as part of that team. And I wouldn't say they were so arrogant. I'm pretty sure they're not arrogant anymore. Maybe Rob Andrew has a little touch of it.
There used to be a thing that New Zealand did, and they did it a couple of years in a row, where they stick a guy into the sevens, and he'd end up going. You'd see him on Rugby Special when they do a special on the Hong Kong sevens, and they cover the final, and the best and fairest is, if you remember the name of the award for the player of the tournament, John Lomu won it in 95, 94, 95.
94, yeah.
New Zealand, and then the following year, who won it? Christian Cullen. And for 2 or 3 years, they pulled guys out of the. But
in those days, there was no kind of circus as there is
Yeah.
now. It was just an end of season shindig.
New Zealand were the only country in the world who could take Vainga Tugamala and think, he's a bit small and slow. Have we got anyone bigger? There's a thing going around on Twitter today of John Lennon's high school sports day results. I don't know if you've seen it. He won the 100, he won the 200, he won the 400, he won the 110 hurdles, he won the shot put, and he won the hammer or something, the discus. The only thing he didn't win was the distance events. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, that's genetic freak for you.
But the world of rugby is a poorer place without him.
Lovely
The
guy
world of
too, by
sports,
all
yeah,
accounts.
yeah.
Never met him, but he seems to be as sound as they come.
Yeah, well, it's very sad anyway. So anyway, boys, on that sad note, thanks very much, and thanks very much for watching. Cheers.